This is Rudy Giuliani back again with another edition of Rudy's Common Sense. And this one couldn't be more timely. All throughout this country and in Canada and in Europe and, oh my goodness, I don't know where, all over the world, we're having, call it a mini, let's right at this point call it a mini revolution or certainly a mini civil disagreement over masks and mask mandates. And why do we have them any longer when, for many, including me, so I'll tell you my prejudice, the science has dictated for a long time that the cloth mask in particular is, number one, worthless, and in certain circumstances, dangerous. In any event, we're talking here about even what should be an easier subject, and that's mask mandates for children in school, children who basically, let's be honest, don't get COVID. And in the few cases in which they do, you either don't know it or they survive it with very, very few exceptions, so few that they may be for other reasons. So why are we still fighting over mask mandates? Now, a man who got involved in this very early on and is an example of what I would have liked to have seen happen all over America when they started pushing us around, because we became sheep. And we should never do that again, by the way. But in any event, this man, Jeff Thomas, stood up. And now he's really accomplished quite a bit. And I want him to tell his story. Jeff is from Altamont, New York, which is, let's say, a suburb outside of Albany, and got really involved in this and now has accomplished a great deal in challenging the New York mandates. But this is universal. You know, if you're challenging the New York mandates, you're challenging the Illinois mandates, the California mandates, the Washington. This is a disagreement over how much power can an executive exercise over the citizens without becoming, honestly, a dictator. So let's go to Jeff Thomas. And first of all, Jeff, thank you for joining us. We really appreciate you giving us the time.
Oh, it's my honor, Mr. Mayor. I'm glad to be here.
And Jeff, I guess we'll begin with, tell us just a little bit about your background so people know who you are. And then I'll ask you how you got involved in this.
Sure. I used to own a large business, and I'm also a real estate developer, and was able to retire in my early 40s. I've been retired for the last 12 years.
And during retirement, what have you been doing?
Well, I had a different plan. I figured I'd be laying on a lot of beaches, but I'm doing things like this. If you want to make God laugh, tell him your plans. I told him my plans. He said he had some different plans for me.
Well, he had you in the right place at the right time. When did you first start beginning to become? First of all, it had to start with your becoming suspicious and worried about these masks, and then it led to taking action. Where a lot of people were suspicious and still are, but they didn't take action. How did it go from being concerned to taking action?
Right. So my two kids, I have a one that's in kindergarten currently, and I have a daughter that's 8 years old that's in eighth grade or second grade. She's 8 years old, and their whole time in school they've been masked. And originally heard about stopping the curve a couple weeks to do that, and then 2020 came in spring or in fall of 2020. They're in school with masks on, and it broke every parent's heart to send their kids to school with masks. It's horrible. I mean, they're learning to talk. They're trying to learn linguistics, and the teachers' lips are hidden. Their lips are hidden. But anyways, May 2021 came around, and Governor Cuomo lifts the mask mandate and a lot of the COVID restrictions, except for schools. So all along, I was waiting for a superhero. I figured one of our politicians would come along, one of our leaders, somebody was going to save us from this ridiculousness and this harmful mandate. The science has always been there. The masks don't work and they're harmful for our kids. But back in May of 2021, I was waiting for somebody to come along, and I realized nobody's coming. Later that day, I decided to start a Facebook group. Started a Facebook group. I figured I'd get a couple hundred members. Started growing rapidly. This is back when it was very unpopular. People still thought masks were great. So I started all of a sudden, it's June of, I'm talking to a legislator. We're talking about introducing legislation, which we did. And it's getting in the 90s in school. My daughter comes home from school. It was 96 degrees that day. She drove home. The kids were driving home in unair conditioned buses. We wouldn't do that. We would never do that with a mask strapped over their face. Her mask was completely wet. It was soaked. It had food on it.
Again,
And
remind us, how old is she?
she's 8 years old.
Oh,
At that time, she was 7. So now she gets home and her demeanor is changing. And I said, honey, and I go, what's wrong? And she goes, the masks. And, I, my heart broke. And I said, the masks, I understand. I said, guess what? You don't have to go to school tomorrow. She said, Dad, I want to go to school tomorrow. I want to learn. So that night I laid in bed. I was heartbroken. What are we going to do? And I looked at my Facebook group. The number was 3,500 members that night. When I woke up in the morning, it was 7,000. It eventually reached 20,000. Later that same day, I introduced legislation down in Albany back in June of 2021. We introduced legislation. We did a press conference, and I spoke, and it was just before the end of session, and many of the legislators, Democrat legislators, said, guess what? We can't do it because we're not in session anymore. We can't act on this legislation.
and what was the legislation? What would the legislation at that point, Jeff, what would it have done?
The legislation would have made it illegal to mask children in any public place, school, any sports arena. Kids are playing sports with masks
Yeah,
on.
yeah, yeah.
They're running
It's-
track. I mean,
and some of them are getting ill. They're fainting, and
well, you're 100% right. Our kids can't breathe in these masks. The masks don't work. So we introduced legislation. All the legislators, we lobbied many legislators. I did Zoom conferences back then with Michelle Hinchney, and they all said, "Oh, when it goes into session, the bill's not before us. We'll act on it. We'll help the children." Well, guess what? Just yesterday, February 14th, 2022, the bill went to the floor of the Assembly and the New York State Senate. It was a hostile bill. I think it's A8101. But it was tagged on to another bill. It went hostily to the floor yesterday. And now we had Chris Tegan introduce it in the Assembly. We had Jim Tedesco, Senator Jim Tedesco, introduced it.
Jim has a lot of seniority.
Jim's great. And so is Chris Tegg. They've been fighting.
They're heroes.
So they introduced it into the Assembly and the Senate. In the Assembly, it was voted on. It was voted on quickly. Now we had all of the Republican Assembly people voted for it, and 7 Democrats. In the New York State Senate, not one Democrat voted to rescue our children from this harmful, abusive mandate. There's only 4 or 5 states left in the whole United States that have masking. One of them is Hawaii. One of them is New Mexico. I believe the District of Columbia, New York State, and California. And what do those states have in common?
What those states have in common are Democratic governors for years, Democratic, almost veto-proof legislatures, Democratic mayors in most of the key cities where crime is almost hitting historic levels, and sometimes Soros-elected DAs.
Kathy Hochul.
Tell me, I don't know her at all.
Andrew, I don't know her either. Andrew Cuomo, they don't care about we the people. And the reason they don't care about we the people is because we the people didn't elect her. I believe she was installed. I believe that cheating has been going on in New York State for a very long time. And when you're cheated and installed, you don't answer to we the people. You're not worried about we the people. You answer to your criminal entity network that got you elected. And you're going to find out, I mean, 85% of the New York counties, I believe it's somewhere around 85%, have Dominion voting systems.
You've been at this now, honestly, it doesn't sound like a long time, but probably for the amount of work that you've done, it has been a long time you've been involved in it.
I figured that when I got in this thing, we started this group, and our my goal was to be an active group. I didn't want to be this little Facebook thing where we just put up little posts and we all argue and we all put up. I had a three-pronged approach: awareness, legislation, and a legal approach. It was called all. And we did it right out of the bat. The first week of June, we had uh, billboards all surrounding the Capitol.
First week of June of
2021.
2021. Okay.
Yep. So back when this thing, I figured we'd only have them. I figured we would have solved this in about about a month or two. I never thought we'd be here in 2020.
Now, when
and we did commercials as well.
This would be a good time to take a short break. Think your homeowner's insurance covers home title fraud? Think again. And neither does your common identity theft program. The FBI calls home title fraud one of the fastest growing crimes, which is why you need to go to HomeTitleLock.com, America's leader in home title protection. Here's the problem. The deed to your home is the only document that proves you own it. And the deeds to all of our homes now are online. In minutes, a criminal can find and forge your name off the deed to your home and refile as the new owner. Like Jeff, who spent a fortune in legal fees after a thief forged himself onto the deed to Jeff's home and took out loans. Jeff didn't have home title lock then. He does now. Or Deborah, who thought our common identity theft service would protect her. Then a criminal got onto the deed to a home and had her evicted. Deborah has home title lock now. HomeTitleLock.com is your peace of mind, and the deed to your home is protected. Visit HomeTitleLock.com. HomeTitleLock.com. Let's go back to our interview with Jeff Thomas.
Yeah, so we did commercials. We played commercials.
I'm going to put one up in a minute, but go ahead.
Yeah, that's the last commercial with Hochul. We actually took Como to task with our commercial, and I know he saw him because he responded. We did rallies. We did the first rally down at the Capitol. There's been many rallies since. We did many rallies. We had many people show up. But the biggest thing we did is we had legislation introduced.
Where do we go from here?
So I called John Sweeney and I said, John, I want to sue the state. And he goes, for what, Jeff? And I go, I'm on the dock at Lake George. I'm calling him on my cell phone. I'm pacing up and down the dock. So I go, John, I want to sue him for the mask mandate and the kids. Silence. I said, John, what do you think? He goes, Jeff, I've been wanting to kick the shit out of New York State.
There's John.
Calls you back, and he's got this great constitutional attorney on the phone. A couple of days later, we're in a phone conference. We have no idea what we're doing, and we decide to go after this thing federally, not on a state level. There was a Nassau suit that won. I remember that. Yes. Supreme Court just a few weeks ago. Now the problem with that's a great lawsuit, and those people did an amazing job. Problem with that is the legislation can change at any time. They can give the governor power to do it. So our lawsuit makes it's a First Amendment lawsuit against our children's inhibited freedom of speech by the mask.
Perfect.
Amazing.
Perfect.
So we have this thing, and I talked to the constitutional attorneys. They said, Jeff, we can't do this without witnesses. So I go, geez, I got 20,000 members. Let me see what I could do. Next thing I know, we find the best witnesses, best experts in the nation and probably globally. We have a Stanford doctor from Stanford. He's the most respected doctor in his field. We have a industrial hygienist about masks, how they don't work. We have Dr. Stock. We have a psychologist. We have all sorts of speech pathologists, join our lawsuit. So we put together an 700 pages lawsuit, submitted it in December. It's being acted on now. It's all ready to be acted on. It's before Judge Lawrence Kahn. I believe he's a registered Republican. He's in his 80s. He should have no fear of any retribution. He ought to be able to do what's right and vote on and vote to, or not vote, but judge to save our children from this harmful mass mandate. Now, what that'll do, if we win the First Amendment lawsuit, it cuts everything else the state's doing off,
Sure.
and it will be used throughout the United States. So it's a very powerful lawsuit. Right now, we're waiting for a conference. We're waiting for a trial. If we put our experts on, Mr. Mayor, our experts will eat the state alive. Our experts.
I know that. I mean, in addition to your experts, with Dr. Maria Ryan, who's been basically on your side from the day it started because she realized that cloth mandates were a joke. I mean, cloth mandates for cloth masks are a joke. In fact, it may be for little children that the mask is more dangerous than helpful.
That's your 100. I'm going to tell you, it is. And I got see this book here. I put this together for any member that wants it. This is all of the testimony, all of the experts. We sent it to all the school board members throughout the state, so they can have all of the evidence right in front of them. And this is expert testimony from the best experts in the nation and globally. So we sent it out, and everybody's afraid to act on it. Everybody, we got many people's attention. My kids go to Catholic school. The bishop, I agree. I think they agree with us, but they know everybody's afraid to act. People need to come forward and act and do what's right. The science hasn't changed. The polls have changed. Science has not changed. The science has always been that masks don't work. They know that. Dr. Fauci, the CDC director, he concluded that this is before this current pandemic, that virtually all the deaths from the 1917, 1918 Spanish flu were caused by a severe secondary bacterial pneumonia caused by the wearing of the face coverings. He knows this. And you have to ask yourself, why the hell would they want to do this to our children? Why would they want to put a mask on their face the bacteria, causes their CO2 levels to rise, lowers their oxygen levels, is a breeding ground for infections, dehumanizing. They live in a constant state of fear. These are years they're never going to get back. Irreparable harm.
Well, Jeff, I got to ask you that in conclusion because it baffles me and probably keeps me up at night, some of the irrational, homicidal decisions they make sometimes. So they've gotten to the point where they lift the mandates on adults. Must be because the mask doesn't work, right? Somebody convinced you the mask doesn't work or you don't need it anymore. Why would they keep it on the children who are the least vulnerable to the disease and are the least able to transmit it to anyone else when, unless you're an idiot, you can figure out putting a mask for 6 hours a day on a 7-year-old has to do damage?
Well, it does. And it's proven. It raises, I think you read the JAMA study that they pulled back later on, but it raises their CO2 levels to 6 times the acceptable rate of an adult in a workplace. It's horrific. It traps bacteria between the mouth and their mask. They breathe their own filth all day. So why would they want to?
Why? So I need, even if it's a speculation, you've been in it more than most people, so it gives you an opportunity to sort of more authoritatively speculate than the normal person.
Unfortunately, there's a battle going on between good and evil. You're Mr. Mayor. Wow. I got to tell you, and I don't realize. Wow. Here's the thing: they lifted the mask mandate on the adults who are making the squawk. A lot of them don't have children. Some of them do, and there's a lot of children, but not every one of them do. And the businesses, so they can run their businesses but the children are still stuck there, and they're the most quiet constituents of all. It's not going to last. It's going to be over very soon. God is going to. That's why we've been very successful in our group. prayed the entire time. We've asked for God's guidance and his assistance, and that's how I got involved in this.
Well,
And
thank you,
he's
John.
been with us from day one.
Well, Jeff, I have to tell you, I have so much respect for you. You're exactly the American that I thought, back a year ago, I became very, very down because I saw them closing the churches on Good Friday and on the high holy days for Jewish people. And I saw us going along with it like sheep.
They got a letter of request into the judge for an immediate conference. There's some stipulation in the law that allows us to have a speedy trial within 10 days. We want to lay all the evidence out there.
But Jeff, we're going to keep in close contact. We're going to have you on again and on the radio because people have to keep up with what's going on here. And the more they keep up with it, the more they're going to join you. And God bless you. You're a hero.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
To
God
the
bless
children,
you.
and that's the best place to be a hero.
God
Thank
bless
you.
you. Thank you. Thank you.
Well, I know you found that as interesting an interview as I did. We need more people like Jeff. You know, I was really worried way back when this first started that too many people were like sheep being led to the slaughter and not. Well, Jeff did exactly the right thing. He fought back. He fought back going to court. And he fought back with, civil, peaceful gatherings and what do we call it under the Constitution? Petitioning the government. That's the way to do it. And it's enormously effective. As you can see, he's on the verge of possibly a major victory and certainly of having raised it in our state. So Jeff dealt with the realities of it, the realities of being a parent and your child crying and your child being kind of locked up like the man in the iron mask for a year and a half, 2 years, whatever. So among other things, Jeff is a good motivator. Find something like that to do. Just don't complain about it. I mean, he saw what was happening to his children. He saw that this made no sense. He read the newspapers, found out about the either no risk or low risk of CCP virus in children at the age of his children. And he said, what is this mask thing? I mean, because there are downsides. That's the common sense part, the citizens part, the human rights part, the constitutional part. But let's go to the science now because they keep talking about the science. And if there's one person that has been consistently correct on the science, it's Dr. Maria Ryan. For 7 years in a row, she's very modest. She won't tell you this. For 7 years in a row, she was nationally, the number one CEO of rural hospitals, largely because of things like this. But most importantly, she had this picked out from day one, right from the beginning. So I'd like her to spend a little time with you and, talk in a way. And there's the other thing she's so good at. She's so good at making these scientific things. I even understand it. So when we take the short break, we will now, instead of seeing me, you'll have the pleasant surprise of seeing Dr. Maria. And then I'll come back at the very end and we'll have a short closing and talk about the next podcast. Thank you, and we'll be back in a few minutes, or Dr. Maria will be back in a few minutes. Not long ago, Mike Lindell, the inventor of MyPillow, and his team fit me for my very own MyPillow. They also introduced me to their wide assortment of other incredible products, like their mattress topper, their sheets, towels, slippers, and more. Sleep is incredibly important to me, and I can assume for all of you. It's time you give MyPillow a try and see for yourself. Listeners have helped build MyPillow into the incredible company it is today, and Mike Lindell wants to give back to all of you. You can get great discounts on MyPillow products by going to MyPillow.com right now and seeing each of the specially priced items, including those in the radio listener special square. You're going to see rotational offers up to 66% off on products like their pillows, mattress topper, Giza sheets, but also new products like their slippers, weighted blankets, robes, and waffle blankets. All MyPillow products come with a 60-day money-back guarantee. Enter promo code RUDY for these great specials. That's MyPillow.com and use the promo code RUDY.
Thank you for having me again, Mayor Giuliani. I always enjoy coming on your podcasts and, of course, spending every Sunday with you on uncovering the truth has been one of the highlights of my life. So I do have 30 years in healthcare in a variety of roles. My last role for over a decade was CEO of a rural hospital, but I'm also a provider. I am a board certified nurse practitioner, and I have my PhD in healthcare administration. So I'm always very interested in the science, in the research. And a lot of times research isn't conclusive or it's manipulated. I actually had a course in my master's level statistics course that taught us how to read research papers, because you can manipulate the conclusions or the results. So you have to look for specific things, including the N, the subject size, how the research was compared to previous research, and again, who is funding the research. But I won't get into scientific details on research papers. So I looked at several meta-analysis of research. And when you do a meta-analysis, you look at multiple different studies looking for common threads, discrepancies, anything like that. And there has been meta-analysis done on mask use and mask effectiveness since 2016, probably much before that too. And the most recent I've looked at is in 2020. So the conclusion, cloth masks are really ineffective. Even surgical masks. Now, this was very interesting, some of the meta-analysis done on surgical masks, because we do use them in the hospital. And we put them on, say, a patient with influenza is the one wearing the mask. So when you go in as a staff member or a food service person coming in, you figure you're protected. So if the patient coughs, there's no forward protection. Well, in some of the studies looking at respiratory illnesses and influenza in particular, the protection was only about 44%. It was a high percentage of leaks through the sides of the masks, underneath and above, going above the patient's forehead. So it's just something for us in the healthcare field to keep in mind, and maybe looking at different ways to protect patients and the healthcare workers. But cloth masks are ineffective. If you layered cloth masks to be at all effective against coronavirus or influenza, you would have to have so many layers you would suffocate the person. And that's the other thing about whether masks are safe, never mind ineffective, which they have been proven to be ineffective. Cloth masks have been proven to be ineffective, even in the mecca of journals, the New England Journal of Medicine. We know cloth masks aren't effective. So Jeff coming out, I just love these parents. They're not only doing a lot of research, they're actually doing something that we like in science. They're doing observational studies with their children. They're looking at, have their children had more respiratory illnesses since wearing masks? Because you know what? They're a repository for bacteria. Literally, if a child sneezes, coughs, even in their regular breathing, if they have any kind of different virus or of the family of coronavirus, it stays in that mask, and the viruses or the bacteria stays in there, and you can be reinfected. So you're supposed to, with the surgical masks, you have any kind of sniffle, any cough, you throw it away and you wash your hands really well and you put on a new one. But the conclusion to these studies basically is cloth masks do not work, and they may be harmful for the reasons of being not only a repository for viruses and bacteria, but also social cues, how we interact with one another. We are a very visual, human beings are very, very visual. And to watch someone smile or to read their lips, if you're a little bit hard of hearing, is very obviously is non-existent when you're wearing a mask. And children need those visual cues for learning. Wearing the masks have led to an increase in depression, suicide attempts among teenagers, and also failing grades for otherwise very astute students If you wear glasses, your glasses fog up. So I support the parents. This is against science. We need to help these parents, getting them all the tools to be successful, to stand up for what is right and just for their children. So the decision makers in the school systems, I liken the mandates for masks for children to a form of child abuse. It is really not healthy for these children to be wearing those masks all day long. Number one, they're ineffective. Any true provider scientist will tell you that. Secondly, as I said, the depression, the inability to look at facial cues, the infections that have happened around the faces of some of the children, the hypercapnia of school age and teenage athletes, because you're keeping carbon dioxide in, so you get headaches, maybe fainting spells. I could go on about this, but I'm very disappointed and angry that Governor Hochul is playing some kind of abuse of power game. I don't get it, because it's not based in science. And if she's getting it from the teachers union, shame on her. She should call me. I would be available for her to give her the right counsel. And also, Mayor Giuliani and I talked about doing a podcast for the general public and for hospital executives, using my expertise in this. After the 2010 H1N1 pandemic, I stockpiled masks, gloves, gowns, stretchers, and a variety of other useful things, getting ready for the next pandemic. So my employees were very well protected, and I was able to help community providers as well. If you'd like to communicate with me, you can reach me through drmariaryan.com, and my Getter, GETTR, is at Dr. Maria, and I communicate pretty effectively with people that route as well. I always enjoy coming on the mayor's podcast, and my mission in life, sincerely, is to help other people with my expertise. And I'm a good listener, and I can always learn. So I enjoy hearing about your expertise. So thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much, Dr. Maria. As usual, a very succinct, very easy to understand, but very authoritative essay, really. It really was very good. And I think it makes clear that you don't want to get involved too much in all of the points involving masks. We will over time as we review this for the future. But here's the simple answer to the question that is most relevant and where the most damage is being done. Children don't need masks. And children certainly don't need cloth masks, because honestly, and it's hard to say this because they made such a big deal out of it, turns out the cloth masks are pretty much useless. Before we go, let me invite you back to our next podcast, which will be in just a day or two. And then I want you to look at this and get a sense of how this is also not only a major health issue where the science has been sacrificed to political something or other dominance, but it's also been psychologically enormously damaging to children, as Dr. Ryan pointed out. I think you can see it sort of from the opposite end when you look at this classroom of children who have just been told that they're no longer going to have to, be the man in the iron mask every day for 4, 5, 6 hours. So take a look at that and see if anyone's exaggerating the damage that this has done because of our dictatorial politicians who went too far. And don't forget, we'll be back in a few days, and send any comments you want, obviously, to rudyscommonsense.com. And Dr. Maria can be found at drmariaryan.com. And we know that Jeff Thomas, who was excellent, by the way, can be reached at Unmask New York school children now. Unmask New York school children now. So those are your contacts, and please respond and give us some help, on what you think. Well, goodbye now until we see you at the next podcast, and God bless the greatest country on earth. God bless America. And now let's conclude with this video.
I can't breathe in this mess. I hate it. I hate it. Like, I can barely breathe.
11-year-old Jenna Miller says she felt like she was suffocating during 90-degree temperatures in class.
There's no air conditioners, there's no fans, it's just hot humidity.
10th grader Alexa Bledgick got emotional talking about what it was like to go to school without a mask yesterday.
I saw life everywhere. Like, my teachers, like, I can finally see all the emotion.
We're gonna get there.
Governor Kathy Hochul is ignoring the science and callously ignoring the concerns of parents across the state.
So we're going to have a mask mandate. Get used to it, my friends.
Contact Governor Kathy Hochul today and tell her it's wrong to use our kids as political pawns and to unmask New York school children now.